Hello, everyone, and welcome to London Tech Week and to our panel, Launching a Climate Tech Startup, Lessons from Three Founders. So I'm Simon Classy-Aldridge and Director of External Affairs at Public. And Rachel, would you like to go next on introductions?
Yes, I'm Rachel Delacour. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sweep. And Sweep is an enterprise carbon software platform to reduce carbon emission in your entire business and, most importantly, on your value chain.
Thank you. Will?
My name's Will Wells. I'm the founder of Hummingbird Technologies, which is an artificial intelligence platform that helps measure sustainability across food supply chains. And we do that primarily from space.
And Fortis?
Hi there. I'm Fotis. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Novoville. We are a company that focuses on how to improve the services we consume as citizens from councils. And we have two main classes of products. The first one is what we call citizen self-service. You consume services a bit better from your council. And the second one has to do with mobility. So the idea there is that you use one of our interfaces to consume a service that somehow relates to how you get around the city.
Great, thanks very much. So what we're here to discuss today with this brilliant panel is the key challenges around growth and adoption and securing investment specific in the climate tech and clean tech sector. So we know that technology has an enormous potential to help us tackle climate change, and lots of the things that are going to help us get to net zero probably don't even exist yet in terms of technology. But obviously there are lots of other things that you guys are doing, and you guys can share with us about how to make that work in practice. It's also worth mentioning that at Public, we have launched the Tech for Our Planet Challenge programme, which is run in partnership with the Cabinet Office, and these guys are all part of that programme, which is showcasing and exploring how digital solutions can contribute to the global climate effort. So thanks all for joining us. I think the three things that we wanted to talk about today are the barriers to growth, wide-scale adoption, and investment. So should we kick off with barriers to growth? So Will, why don't we hear from you first?
Sure.
In your experience, what have been your biggest barriers to growth?
So ours have been multifaceted, and firstly, there are several practical barriers just to launch, because we use drones and satellites powered by machine learning algorithms, and accessing data on that scale, looking at every single farm in a whole country and trying to measure often invisible symptoms of carbon emissions or sustainability activities requires funding, time, masses of skills, even just to get a minimal viable product. But I'd say that of those challenges, the biggest is probably getting a large, high-quality data set to power a real-world AI solution. You need so much to get good accuracy and automation, and it's an ongoing challenge, but hopefully one that we're on the right side of now.
The problem is so vast, the problem is so huge to tackle that any resources you need for that, at this scale, it's complicated to get. On our side, what has been a barrier, to start was either we were tackling individuals or companies, and we come from the B2B world. We've already started a business 10 years ago, a startup. We've been acquired by Zendesk for your information. So we are a bunch of tech repeat entrepreneurs, and we wanted really to choose our battle, and when we were scanning, and understanding the market and the impact of what we were about to build, it was about, okay, where do we have the most impact? Where can we leverage, the most impact? And actually, it's companies. we don't think that individuals will make it, on time, regarding the challenges we are all facing, while the companies, they have all the regulations, they have the pressure of their customers, they have the pressure of their employees. So we said, okay, let's build something for them in particular to reduce their emissions, and let's start from here. So individuals, companies, and our bet was companies. But at least, it's the way you are navigating all this, and the fight you are picking, actually.
If I was to add something useful to what the guys have just said, which is entirely true, is because we are selling to local councils. The biggest problem we've had so far is the very long sales cycle. So I haven't spoken to a council yet around Europe in the countries we operate that somebody said we don't like what you are doing, or it's not useful for the environment, we don't like the approach you have. Everybody's happy, everybody likes the product, but then when it goes into procurement or into the decision cycle, this can take anything from 3 to 8 months before we actually have somebody using the product. So for us, it has been by far the most difficult problem. Maybe something on top of that is that every council in Europe, in the 3 different countries we are operating in at least, they perceive the solution to the problem vastly different. So we have to come up with new requirements and new specifications for exactly the same product, simply because there is a cultural difference or a legislation difference in the different countries we work with.
That's really interesting. So I've heard a few different things there around procurement and the difference between, individuals and businesses as customer bases, but then also, the different situation in each local geography within which you guys work. So in thinking about solutions then, what do you think startups are doing and can do to break down these barriers? And actually, what do governments need to be doing to make the environment better? Fortis, do you want to start?
For us, I would say that the thing that worked was trying to convince them that doing something small, again, maybe I'm a bit biased because the type of clients we have are very, very specific with very specific bureaucratic issues. But what we have seen that works very well is to create a proof of concept, very small pilots, without necessarily big contracts. You can get to those later. You need to do something that fits the bill, but also is almost on the side. If something goes wrong, it doesn't really affect the way they operate on a daily basis. We've never had problems proving the value of the product so far, but you need to start small and grow bigger. The minute a council or a local government in general trusts you to do something, most probably you will stay there for a long period of time. The difficulty we have is to start the relationship. The minute this happens, then they understand the value, because we take care of how they communicate the impact that the solution has to the environment, and most importantly, we convert it into meaningful engagement for citizens. And the minute you are there starting with something small that doesn't affect the daily process, then they say, okay, since Novoville is doing this little thing, we might trust them to do something a bit bigger. So it's all about, in the public sector, as you know already, it's all about managing relationships. And the minute these relationships become concrete, then you can grow a lot faster. But this is against the startup culture of every other sector. We are used in startups because I've been involved in other ones in the past, we are used in doing things very quickly, grow very fast. With the public sector, you need to have patience, you have to stay there for a while. And the funding, which I'm sure we will touch later on, has a lot to do with it, because funding gives you the space to breathe for a while until you convert leads and relationships into clients and something meaningful for your company.
I think just add there. So one of the interesting things about Novoville is trying to tap into this this consciousness, like a willingness to engage in their city, like citizens using data to engage better. And looking at Rachel's business as well, it's all about software and data to try and understand footprint. And this is possibly where we all share something in common, which is, you know, Hummingbird is trying to use data and imagery to try and help us understand where our food comes from. And when we buy lettuce in the supermarket or a pint in the pub, what is the carbon emissions that took to prove that? And it's a good example of technology chipping away at B2B or governmental decisions to do that.
Yeah, the sooner we are showing the public sector, the sooner we are showing the governments that they can finally, you know, ask and they can regulate, you know, and ask companies for more efforts, you know, regarding their carbon reduction plans, etc. The sooner we are showing that the tools are already there, you know, services are already there to help either individuals or companies to do so. I see myself, my company, as a tool actually to help regulations to kick in, because it's what's finally is really scaling, you know, the effort. So we need those regulators, we need those governments, you know, to ask for the real start, you know, in our world today. But it's super complicated when you know, to ask a company to reduce their emission when they have no clue how to do so, when they have no when they don't have any tools to do so. So the sooner we are showing that we are all working well together, that we are all making real footprint, but reduction trajectory, you know, something that you can monitor super easily at scale, the better it is for everyone. The sooner we may find the answer all together, you know, the solution.
So can I just ask a further question, Rachel, based on what you were just saying there and what you were saying at the beginning about the difference between your public sector customer and your business customer? So then what can these business customers, if they're, you know, being regulated by the government in a different way, or there are regulations that exist to allow you guys to operate more effectively, what then how should the business community and the larger business community be interacting with startups, and how can they support you, and what do you need from them?
They need to understand that it's you know, a company can't claim to be carbon neutral, you know, at a company scale. It's a company can only claim to be aligned on worldwide carbon neutrality, and it's when this company is able to work with its own territory, local territory. You know, we can talk about carbon neutrality when a company is working with other startups to ensure that they are reducing their emissions, but when they are working with their whole supply chain, with their territories, local entities, local public sector, and this is when everyone starts to be aligned on worldwide carbon neutrality. I hope I'm clear enough, you know. Pardon my French, guys, but yeah. So this is when companies are coming to us, we are not. Our role is also to diffuse, to inject vision about what should be done worldwide. You know, it's not about just giving them a certificate about claiming they are carbon neutral and that's it. It's about ensuring they are starting a climate journey involving their whole value chain. You know. So it's something really important, and the more we are able to work all together, and it's not just something, you know, something we want to be profitable. We are building a business. It's not about just being full of good intentions, you know. But it's really there is plenty of educations that we can also spread through technologies to those guys who are really acting on site. So yeah, does it resonate, guys? What I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm seeing nods. It's before we move on to the next section, I just wanted to briefly mention COP, because you guys will, you know, be showcasing some of your solutions there, and which is really exciting. But it's also a place where you have lots of the business community together, lots of international government communities together as well. So what are you hoping, from your perspective, what would be the dream outcomes in terms of regulatory debates or commitments or things like that you'd like to see out of COP later this year?
I can go first if you want. So if we're thinking about food and agriculture and let's say, EU policy or UK policy towards the sector, there's this interesting debate and beginning to look like a harmonization of policy around, on the one hand, we've got this critical sector that feeds us all, but on the other hand, you know, a third of all food is wasted, 10% of global carbon emissions come from it, a third of all greenhouse gases, the list goes on. So what does Hummingbird want? What do we all want? Is for technology to be front and center in terms of the solution. So we want governments and we want policymakers to acknowledge that, you know, food and agriculture is the least digitalized of all major industries, and only data and machine learning and drones and satellites and robots can actually get us there. It's not hype, it's real. And if we're going to make sort of quantum leap efficiencies, it's got to be done through well-funded technology.
Novoville is mainly an IT company. That's how we started. I mean, so we gradually moved into the smart and green sector space. So it was always easier for us to explain the smart aspect. It's easy to talk about our products and why they are better than other products, etc. We realized when we started working with Edinburgh, the city of Edinburgh, about a year ago, we started discussing a solution where we allow them to manage the repairs for what they call shared tenements in Scotland, those beautiful buildings in the historic centre of Edinburgh. 70% of those buildings are in critical disrepair. That's what the council says. So they're about, you know, to go down, and people need to act and repair them quickly. And as we were preparing a solution for people to coordinate, open bank accounts, do all sorts of different things that make the process very complicated to keep these buildings in shape, they told us in a random meeting that they are planning to go carbon neutral by 2030. And then in another meeting that 30% of the emissions in Edinburgh come from the buildings, the shared tenements. So we thought, guys, this is a no-brainer. We should have a list of repairs in the app that do not only relate to the condition, which is of course the touristic aspect of the building itself, like looking at it and making it look better, but also use this opportunity to upgrade these buildings so that they become more energy efficient. And we have estimated, quite well that we could contribute to the percent missing for them to become carbon neutral to a great degree, simply by telling people that when you repair your roof, you should be using this specific set of materials because this will help the environment. And what I'm hoping for during COP is that we are going to be able to pitch that you don't really need things that are super complicated. There are things happening that if you standardize a bit better, you will be able to achieve the goals you are after without breaking the bank, and most importantly, without reinventing the wheel, because there is this perception, in councils at least, that to go carbon neutral, they need to demolish everything and start from scratch, which is not the case. It's more about, adding a thing or two into the processes they have in place or making things a bit more efficient. Again, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's probably more the experience
we all have our own asks for the COP26. On my side, the fact that we've built this very robust infrastructure to help companies to tackle their Scope 3 in a precise way. To be able to really embrace the carbon data, which is everywhere in a super different. It's a matter of how you are able to integrate data, etc. We've managed to ease that. Today we have even use cases with enterprise, large corporations, but also with financial institutions. Okay, because they are they are obliged and they are in a need to understand what's behind this Scope 3. You know, what does it mean? What are they accountable for? What are they responsible for when they are investing €1, you know, in a company? So we are talking about their asset management or even their credit lines, you know. So they must understand the carbon footprint they have when they are investing. Okay, and when you are talking to them today, they are telling you actually we are asked we should be everyone is throwing, you know, all the NGOs are throwing, you know, complaints about what we are doing, etc. But we are trying to do our best. But at the end, it's not we are not the regulators ourselves. You know, we should be told what we must do. And today it's absolutely not clear what's asked to the finance world, to all those financial institutions. So and they need it, and they are preparing them to that. I'm not trying to what I mean is that they need to have people at COP26 who are really able to put rules, you know, to write rules and to just communicate those rules and to implement those rules at a worldwide level. But there is a willingness to do so. It's super complicated. Tools are existing today to help them to do so, but at some point they can't make the decision by themselves. You know, they must be forced to that. Problems today is that we are not yet able to agree on what we want to ask them.
I hope there's lots of public sector colleagues from local, national and international governments, as well as lots of bigger
incredibly
business.
Complicated. And the fact that even those regulators are still wondering exactly what there is behind, etc. So this is where startups like us, you know, we don't have the final answer to everything, of course, but at least if we can all work to bring data, to bring use cases, to bring a voice through technology, that's great. If we can really participate to that, that's why I'm waking up every morning, you know.
Thank you so much, all of you, for that. I think it would be worth moving on to the challenges for wide-scale adoption, because I know that's something all of you have perspectives on. But Fortis, to start with you, do you think there are any challenges for wide-scale adoption which are unique to the climate tech space?
Yes. Well, I think when it comes to companies our size, I guess everything seems difficult. Every challenge is very big to bear. But for us, I'm probably going back to what I said at the very beginning. We had a series of things that we had to explain a bit more. First of all, we have this very strange business model that is supported by councils, so you could call it B2B. And then we have another part which is B2C, because without the engagement of individuals, the citizens themselves, the platform is not used, and we don't have any clients paying for the annual subscription. So there, you see something very strange, which is when you talk to councils about the impact of the technology towards the environment, and that they should be selecting solutions that take this into account, it's almost like a black box to them. So it's like they have a list of things to do, and somebody needs to tell them about the environment so that they check this box and they move to the next step. It's not about the little details. So sadly, it's good for us when you do the sale, of course, but sadly, talking about the environment has not proven to be as important as it should during the sales process. I would like people to challenge what we do, or shared repairs, the product in edible, for example, a bit more. And you would expect that these would be the individuals challenging solutions a bit more, because they're going to be the ones enforcing the use of the technology. They're going to be the ones that are going to regulate later on to make this available to everybody. And on the other side of the spectrum, with individuals, with citizens ourselves, what we saw very quickly is that even though we didn't expect them to think about the impact very quickly into the process, we realized that not only they wanted this to happen as quickly as possible, but also they had opinions of their own. So when you are offering a specific roofing material, they came back to us and they said, yes, this is 80% efficient, but you should be offering this package that makes the product even more efficient, the product you're offering to citizens, which is 90% efficient. So it looks like they become, the minute you give them the product, the minute you give them the ability to do something useful for the society they live in, they become a lot more productive themselves, and they have opinions of themselves. They can improve the product that we create a lot more than we could on our own. So the paradox here is that to conclude my mumbling now, is that you would expect that governments to be a bit more careful with the choices they make about the products, but it's and the citizens to require a bit more training for this to happen. But it looks like activation and engagement works a lot better with citizens than governments that are regulating for the cities we live in.
Well, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about challenges and also your previous question around, you know, what does COP26 give us as a platform, as an opportunity. I'm hoping that one of the biggest outcomes will be that all of these public and private pilots and business models can be showcased, so that, you know, DEFRA in the UK can see what Nestle in Brazil are doing in terms of delivering climate resilient or nature positive outcomes. And there's so much corporate experimenting going on in the private sector, and there's so much sort of policy on the horizon that, you know, all of the tech companies around the world are just slightly waiting for you know, a more harmonized version of, you know, what needs to be measured by whom, how, and with what level of accuracy. Because once that's in place, the innovation will hopefully sort of look after itself. But, you know, it's sort of like estimated guessing, you know, at best in many markets, which is not good enough, really.
Our bet on our side to scale is to have concentrated as much resources as possible since the beginning, you know, in terms of reflection or of thinking on the infrastructure, how to scale it. And the fact that we are today positioned and that we are talking to enterprise-sized companies, it's helping us actually to spread the word about Sweep, because when they are starting to understand, to measure their footprint, we are, for example, working with an account, with a large account who has more than 800 subsidiaries everywhere in the world. So we are talking about spreading the word about Sweep and about how important it is to gather all this data, consolidate it, you know, at some point, you know, for the mothership, and you are starting to spread the word in Brazil and in everywhere. And when you are still chasing your scope 3, you are asking smaller suppliers, you know, to enter that game too. And this is we are trying to nail that infrastructure for that, you know, to scale. How many people can be, how many companies can be onboarded and spread the word themselves to imply their own scope 3. Scope 1, scope 2 is always the scope 3 of someone, you know. So how are we articulating, navigating all this through technologies to onboard people, to make them understanding that, okay, I have been asked to do so by my customers. So okay, why am I doing so? Okay, maybe I should ask my own suppliers to do so. And this is when you are starting to be serious about the data you are producing at a sector level, at an industry level, you know, at a whole value chain level. So, and the sooner we are able to show that, you know, to spread that, the best it is for again and again convince the COP26 guys, you know, regulating out there.
Sorry to jump in again, but I think doing that through challenges, at least that's what I've seen so far, works very well, because typically regulators, the public sector in general, they show up a lot more relaxed at those events. They are ready to tell others about the requirements they have and the problems they have, which is not happening when you speak to them directly in the context of, I'm a company trying to sell you something. So during challenges, I believe they become a lot more about describing what they require, and they have become a lot more open, listening to startups and success stories than they are when you go with a cold call or a direct sale, telling them about what they should be doing because you've been doing it yourself for a while and you know it's better for them.
They need data to approve any kind of budget. It's public money at some point, so they need data, and yeah, at some point they will tap into the right ones.
I think that's exactly right. It's the evidence required to make a decision, and that's where you guys can come in. I just want one more thing on this wide scale adoption before, because I know we've got to move on to investment as well, because there's lots of things that everyone will want to hear from you about that. Fortis, at the beginning you were saying about the difference between working in the private sector and working in the public sector, and how in the public sector you kind of have to go against the grain of being a startup and work a bit slower than you normally would and start a bit smaller than you normally would. Do you think, so I would love to hear some tips from you in terms of that for people in the climate tech space trying to break in, and how they might adopt that approach?
It took us a while to do that, to be honest. And to be honest, when we started raising money for this, we spoke to a lot of funds at the time, explaining our vision about the company and how growth will come by creating a lot of impact rather than coming up with a hockey stick growth. That the first time I heard that, I'm like, what are they talking about? Because they told me, yeah, you are showing growth, but it's not hockey stick growth. So occasionally that was the basis of all the pitches I was creating from there on. I was trying to explain to them the value of a company that will not necessarily grow within 6 months, which was the perspective before COVID, before the crisis. You have to do something quickly, make money very quickly. We invest there, we get out, we make money from this startup because they grew very quickly. In GovTech and the companies that relate the environment, you need to understand as an investor, and of course to be able to show it as a founder, that things will take slightly more because of the nature of the business, but you are gaining in two ways. There aren't many industries in the world where you have the loyalty of your clients as much as we have in the sector we operate. Not a lot of startups in other sectors have contracts that are for 5 or even 10 years. This is not happening anywhere else. And also the fact that you have very low churn. I mean, the possibility of losing the contract is very low, not because you are fooling them. It's because the government is in need of very productive solutions that if you do the minimum to help them, create the data, help them in the everyday operations, then you will stay there forever. And the growth will come a bit later, but it will be a lot bigger than anticipated originally. So what I would say to somebody trying to raise money for a solution that relates to the environment or the GovTech sector in general would be, to be honest, don't try to fool them by telling them that you're going to have all the governments of the world within 1 month, because this will never happen and you're going to run into trouble very quickly. Talk to them about the small successes you have until then, and talk to them more about the long run. Tell them that you will become somebody that will have the loyalty of citizens around Europe or around the world, or the loyalty of governments for a period that was never anticipated in any other sector previously. At least that's what we've done, and it has worked relatively well.
Thank you. Go on, Rachel.
No, I would say that, as for my first company, actually, you must solve a problem first, So even if we are talking about a clean tech or traditional tech, SaaS or else, at some point, if you are able to answer a need, a pain, that customers are currently facing in the context of climate change, this is when you start to monetize. This is when you start to actually be appealing, attractive for VCs. So it's about it's about solving the big picture, climate change. But at some point, you need to solve a problem right now, and there is plenty of money today being thrown into climate tech, etc. So there is plenty of opportunities to raise money. Now it's a matter of still solving a problem first, right now.
Just to add to you, I think the size of the problem, it can be almost intoxicating, which is we're all obsessed with solving climate change with these moonshot solutions. And the challenge is that it's such an obvious pain point that you can easily lose track of the product. And I see lots of technologies ranging from, food waste reduction, direct carbon air capture, hydrogen fuel cells that have slightly missed the user. So sort of almost what Fotis was saying around, you've got to think of your government user. You got to think of how to solve this massive climate pain point, but for a specific user, because unless you're starting with a product mindset, you're just going to be creating a great technology without a home. And that would be my sort of tip / blocker.
And after that, if I can add, it's an incredible time today to launch a startup in this particular field, climate tech, to solve climate change, because it's crazy how many people want to join you. Actually, we've seen massive a number of people able to even do cut their salaries to join because of the mission, because of so it's a great time if you have the right project, to be surrounded by very smart people. And I can tell you, having started the business 10 years ago, that it's it's super difficult to hire the smart ones. But in this area, I can assure you that smart people just want to join, and there is a strong move, from young and smart and brilliant, even oldest people who want to join that kind of company. So
yeah, as you say, it's the mission, isn't it, that brings people along. We've started to talk about it, but I think it'll be a really good time to bring us to the last part of the conversation before we run out of time about attracting investment. So I've heard a lot about the necessity of having a solution and understanding your user and understanding your customer and kind of bringing your tribe along with you. But Will, perhaps we start with you about how young climate tech startups can, hearing everything that you guys have been saying, and I hope everyone's written it down because there's lots of lessons in there, but what else can we do what else can climate tech startups do to make themselves attractive to investors?
Okay, so there's some practical guidance here. So I think if you're based in the UK, you can go after some incredible, grants or other competition wins that will enable you to bootstrap your idea from a very early stage without necessarily being distracted by, endless VC rounds. Now that can obviously backfire as well if you're scaling up a grant-led business. But I think the non-dilutive sort of cash extra is a big plus, and it's something that all European climate tech startups should fully exploit. And my number 2 is just base yourself somewhere where, as we've just heard, the talent comes to you, because it is an intoxicating space. But you do need to be able to exploit the very best technical talent to get your idea off the ground.
To add to this, which is really so true, is that when you are pitching to an investor, at least that's my take. Okay, maybe it's a bit oversimplified, but they are looking for a total addressable market. That's really, when you talk to them, independent of whether your product is for a good cause or about the environment or something that is super commercial, and they are looking for an addressable market. So because the line of business we are in is a very strange one, and we find it occasionally very difficult to convey the information about the impact of our work. The one advice I have for people looking to raise money would be to go a bit bolder about the impact the work they are doing is going to have in the near future. So it is different saying that our technology is now being used by one city and in one country, and we have 3,000 downloads. Okay, that's probably the near truth, and it's different telling an investor that we are planning to sell to 50 cities, 3 countries, and the work we will do is going to impact 12 million individuals in those cities. You are not really lying here. You are not telling them that this is, your clientele or this is what you're going to do with the business. But it's a different way to present the prospects and the potential of your work. So it is important, even if you only have a tiny bit of traction, to be able to convert it into something a bit bigger. Not to lie, I repeat that because it might sound a bit strange, but to be able to make them understand the impact of your product, the impact of your team into things like the environment, the state of our governments, the transparency of our governments, and the access that you should have as a citizen to things that make sense for humanity.
Yeah, having the right team to solve the right pain now that you can monetize right now in the big picture of all what you are building for the future, but showing that you are already able to answer a real pain. Yeah.
And there's also lots of climate and clean tech specific funds as well. So 2150 is a good example where they just seek to invest in companies like yours. We are running out of time, which is such a shame because I feel like we could keep going, keep talking. I think there's lots that you guys have been talking about of things that are specific to this sector. So, the longer term nature, the kind of different customer and the different kinds of challenges that we're solving. But for me, and you guys have said it as well, that just shows how much bigger the opportunity is and how much more exciting and interesting the opportunity is, whether that's for people working here or for people starting new companies or for people investing. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time today. What I would love is your final parting thoughts. So what do each one of you wish that you would have known 5 to however many years ago? What would you like to leave people with? Forty, to start with you.
Yeah, we found out the hard way, but don't be perfectionist about the first version of your product. The most important thing is for your product to be out there, and the only good feedback you will ever get for your product is from the people that you are planning to introduce it to, your clients, your users. If you go into a feature trip waiting for your product to be perfect, you will never launch the product. It never happens. It's quite rare that you go out with the perfect product. Some people have done it, I guess, but we lost a lot of time at the very beginning of the Novovit journey, believing that we have to be extremely well polished before we actually have the solution out there for people to use. That's not true at all. The minute you have something working, go out and wait for the feedback. That's super, super important.
I just would say to reloop with what you just said. Decisions are temporary, and you have to understand that, to live with that, and just start. Yeah.
I think I'd say as a roundup to aim for something very big, but with relentless focus, because I think there's more climate change VC money that's been raised in 2021 than in the last 5 years put together. But most of the first wave of unicorns are there. So the second wave needs to be more focused than ever. You can still go big, but don't be scared to narrow your focus. Yeah. That's where we see most of the winners now.
That's so brilliant. Thank you, guys. Well, this is making me think that we should have a 2021 Tech for Our Planet cohort playbook that we work together on, and publish after COP.
And join
So,
forces.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
Partnership makes a big difference.
Yeah. It's not I'm not seeing the competition the same way. I'm seeing. I saw that during my first company. Yeah.
And I think that goes to what you were saying before about mission as well. This is like a shared mission
definitely.
in a different way. Thank you so much for your time today. I know that I've learnt a lot from all of you, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you and seeing you at COP. And I'm sure that others have too. So thanks very much, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Salut tout le monde.